Um, the United States was unprepared for the scope of the squatter Donald Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 presidential election. By election day, Trump had spent months calling the election rigged, and historians and democracy experts warned of the damage that these false claims would come to make. But when the squatter stepped to a lectern in the White House late on election night and insisted that he won when in reality he lost, many Americans were taken aback. Much worse was still to come. Trump calling Georgia Secretary of State, asking him to find 11,000 votes, attempting to weaponize the Justice Department, and instigating the failed January 6th insurrection. Um, Now Americans are ready now. If anything, they're overprepared. Many members of the uneasy coalition of Democrats and former Republicans who oppose Trump are frantically focused on what they call the danger of Trump and his GOP allies trying to steal the 2022 midterms and especially the 2024 election. This is not without justification. Many of Trump's henchmen, meanwhile, are frantically focused on stealing it, but these watchdogs risk missing the grave danger. And the one thing that we do not want is Trump winning this fair and square. Trump winning in 2016 was a serious wound to the American experiment. His clinging to power in 2020 poured salt into that wound. Trump losing in 2024 and trying to steal the election would be even more catastrophic. But a straightforward victory, a very real possibility, could be a mortal injury to us all. A Trump squadancy in 2024 is almost certain, and a nomination is probable, which we don't want either. But he has already done everything except declare his candidacy officially. Basically, unusually demurely for him with an announcement and public statement. Some skeptics still think it's a feint, but why wouldn't he run if he thinks he can win? In 2016, Trump won only a plurality of the GOP primary voters and faced nearly unanimous opposition within the Republican establishment. But if anything, he'll head into 2024. Um, if anything, he'll head into 2024 with the party more unified around him, even though polling suggests more ambivalence among the GOP voters. A large group of Republicans are eyeing the 2024 race, but several have said that they won't run if Trump does. Others, like Chris Christie, say they won't defer to Trump, but Christie proved to be not even a speed bump for Trump in 2016. There's no reason to think that any of that has changed. But on Saturday, Trump held a Klan rally in Iowa featuring Senator Charles Grassley, an old school Republican in both temperament and chronology, a symbol of Trump's takeover of the party. Basically, many Senate Republicans privately hope that Trump doesn't run, but the more telling fact is that they won't say so publicly. Even the Senate Minority Leader Moscow Mitch, who sharply castigated Trump after January 6th, has since said that he would absolutely back Trump if he's the Republican nominee. Now, could he win? Of course he could, but it is unlikely, though not impossible. That the current era of chaos and free fall all around the Biden administration will continue for the next 3 years. To see another example of a 4-year train wreck, you got to go all the way back to the last squatter. Biden also retains certain structural advantages. Incumbents have a built-in edge, and although the future course of the pandemic is unpredictable, the economy seems likely to improve, if slowly. But the approval rating of the president has slipped definitively underwater, and the intensely polarized environment makes it harder for him to claw back favor once lost. Most worryingly for the Democrats, Biden has lost favor with independent voters, but incumbency doesn't seem to be quite the boost it once was. Both Trump and Barack Obama saw their vote share slip as they ran for second terms. Besides, given the tight margins of several states, Trump wouldn't need to gain much or Biden to beat him in the rematch. This adds up to a decent shot at Trump winning in 2024, at least an electoral college win, as in 2016 and perhaps even the popular vote win that has twice eluded him. Somebody wrote on the eve of the 2020 election that a second Trump term would be more dangerous than the first, but a second Trump term beginning in 2024 would go beyond that. Some of the smartest arguments for not panicking about the future Trump threat have some from Ross Douthat. He's a conservative Trump critic who argues that although Trump may indeed be an aspiring dictator, that matters little if he can't execute. Again and again, his most alarmist critics have accurately analyzed his ruthless amorality, but then overestimated his capacity to impose his will on subordinates and allies, let alone the country as a whole. But understands the changed institutional landscape that would greet Trump upon re-entering office on January 20th of 2025. Trump would likely have unified Republican control of the House and Senate, and he would have a conservative majority in the Supreme Court and the real possibility of naming Justice Stephen Breyer's replacement. Trump did have a Republican Congress for the first 2 years of his term, but he didn't know how to use it, and both chambers were led by Republicans who were deeply skeptical of Trump and his goals. Then the Speaker, Paul Ryan, didn't do much to stop Trump, but he slowed him down, as did Moscow Mitch. Now Paul Ryan is gone, and McConnell has demonstrated his flexibility. The internal Republican resistance to Trump has been winnowed away, leaving little more than Mitt Romney in the Senate and a handful of representatives in the House. Trump is in the midst of a quest to purge them, too, targeting Republicans who voted to impeach him. He's already forced Ohio's Anthony Gonzalez to drop his re-election bid, and he's doing his best to take down Liz Cheney in Wyoming. More pliable legislative and judicial branches would help Trump, but he would also have a better control of the executive branch. He assembled his first administration from misfit toys and cast-offs, staffers who would never have gotten such jobs in another presidency because they were too inexperienced, too incompetent, and too abrasive or too extreme. On his return, he would do better. Those staffers are now seasoned and more able, and fewer veteran Republicans would remove themselves from consideration next time anyway. The government lost many able, conscientious civil servants during Trump's squadancy, but others calculated that they would weather 4 years. These people both kept the government functioning when political appointees couldn't, and also they pushed to ensure the rule of law where Trump tried to erode it. And for their pains, they were labeled the deep state. Many of these people would probably quit if Trump came back to power anyway. And those who fret about the fate of American democracy aren't going to do so. And they just maybe they may just be focusing too much on the scenario in which Trump illegally seizes power, and not enough on the possibility of a duly elected second term. If Trump were to win fairly in 2024, he could and probably would subvert the rule of law and the democratic law, just as much as if he lost and tried to steal the election. But he'd do so to form a place of greater legitimacy. The elected despot is a common type around the globe. The rise and fall of the Trump squadancy allowed some people to reassure themselves that although many things in American society are broken, a fundamental lodestar remains in place. In this story, Trump was unable to win the popular vote twice. He only won on the technicality of the Electoral College once, and once voters saw him in action, they recoiled and tossed him out. Perhaps the 2024 election will reinforce that, or perhaps Trump won't run. But it's hard to have a lot of confidence in either of those scenarios. A Trump victory in 2024 would upend that story. Many politicians are fond of a remark by Winston Churchill. Americans basically the remark by Winston Churchill says, "Americans will always do the right thing only after they have tried everything else." The possibility remains that they might try everything else and then opt for the wrong thing after all. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.